Hello, my name is Madeline Castrey and I'm delighted to introduce you to this very special project. Parkinson's disease is the fastest growing neurological disease in the world. It's estimated that 1 in 500 people are affected by this progressive disease, and the number of total people living with the condition in the UK is expected to grow by a fifth by the year 2030. What you might not realise is that around 1 in 20 people suffering from the condition start experiencing symptoms under the age of 40. This is known as young onset Parkinson's disease. What you also might not realise is that Parkinson's disease currently has no cure, and it's the job of vital research to find it. With advances in treatment making for a normal or near normal life expectancy, the Parkinson's community is trying to find new ways to improve the physical condition of those affected, to keep mobility and range of movement the best it can possibly be, all whilst living with this progressive condition. Well, singing is something that we might easily take for granted, but it's something that myself and indeed many others believe is a vital source of physical and mental well-being. The way we breathe, the way we stand, the way we move, think and feel, they're all tapped into when we sing, and for those reasons I believe that singing and broader music as a whole holds a vital position as an activity that can improve so much, breath control, motor function, and also bring about a lot of joy and togetherness. And I think that's something that's often forgotten about with physical conditions, the fact that they bring about a lot of mental conditions too, not just for that person but for the support network around them. And singing and partaking in music does a lot to alleviate that. Having become really familiar with the Parkinson's community, what struck me is the unwillingness to let the condition be defining. It's so inspiring seeing how people who are suffering from the fastest growing neurological condition in the world just don't let this condition get in the way of them living their life. But obviously as a musician and predominantly a singer, I'm really curious to see what techniques and what musical and singing techniques can be used to improve the physical and mental condition of people living with the disease. So really there was only one possible project to undertake, and that was a single, especially written and performed and recorded by people living with the condition. The writing of this single takes into account the techniques. You'll see very soon some of the techniques that we've been using to improve the physical condition, bring a lot of joy, and hopefully the project will raise funds and awareness and ultimately prove that anything is possible. If One Direction can do it, why not us? Despite being such a fast-growing condition, there's much we still don't know about Parkinson's disease. And this complex condition requires an equally complex network of support. The primary source of such support is Parkinson's UK. Today I'm speaking to Director of Transformation Julie Dodd about how the charity makes a difference, and to learn a bit more about the condition itself and the vital research surrounding it.
So Parkinson's UK is, we're both the biggest non-profit funder of Parkinson's research in Europe, but also we are the biggest provider of direct services to people with Parkinson's and their close friends and family. And that support involves a combination of things. So getting to people at the point of diagnosis, when they're diagnosed, and then getting kind of ongoing support from us, both from our advisors. So we have a helpline, we have local advisors who can work with people at home as well as in their communities, and then connecting them to a range of advice, information, local support through our local groups, and they're kind of helping them get involved with their health and social care professionals in their area as well as with us nationally.
And I think from looking at some of the stuff that you do, it's just the diversity of activities is amazing. So I've seen a lot of exercise, and obviously this project is to do with music. So do you find that specific sort of stimulus like that really makes a difference to people with Parkinson's, and how does that really help?
Yeah, there's a huge difference made by the wide variety of activities that happen both locally and nationally for Parkinson's. So there is no cure for Parkinson's at the moment. The drugs only help manage symptoms. They don't actually stop progression of the condition. So anything we can do to help people live better quality of life, get better support every day is really meaningful.
With the diagnosis of Parkinson's, I think talking to some people who live with the condition, initially they were kind of going to the GP for sort of lethargy and feeling fatigued and having all these tests and nothing was showing up. So is it quite hard to detect? Does early diagnosis make a difference at all, or is it just sort of something that can go easily misdiagnosed for a number of years?
I think you've really picked a key point there. It does go misdiagnosed a lot, especially for younger people diagnosed with Parkinson's. There's a real misconception that Parkinson's only affects older people, which, whilst it is true that you're more likely to develop Parkinson's later in life, you can get it at any age. I met somebody recently who was diagnosed at 17, which is unusual, but it is possible. It's particularly misdiagnosed in younger people, but we hear it all the time from people from all walks of life, where they were told it was frozen shoulder, they were told it was a different kind of muscular issue or musculoskeletal issue, and got referred from different types of consultants until finally they found a neurologist or a geriatrician or somebody who works in movement disorders, who went, actually this looks like Parkinson's. And on the question of would earlier diagnosis help? Well, it would certainly remove a lot of the emotional trauma of being misdiagnosed and not knowing what's going wrong with you. But actually, because we think we're making quite significant progress towards research breakthroughs, so treatments that really could not just mask the symptoms, but slow, stop, or even reverse what's going on in Parkinson's, if we can pair that with earlier diagnosis, then we can get to you earlier when you've preserved more of those dopamine producing brain cells, which is what's causing the problem in Parkinson's. And the death of dopamine producing brain cells is the biggest contributor. We can get to you and protect more of them earlier. So yeah, early diagnosis is going to be really important, as well as getting in there with some treatments that hopefully coming not too far in the future.
So I guess the really important thing is raising awareness. So what are those things to look out for? Yeah,
so so many misconceptions. People do think of it's just the shakes, it's just an old man's disease, whereas actually it has over 40 symptoms, which range from very physical things, so stiffness, slowness of movement. A thing that's quite unique to Parkinson's called freezing, where you're moving, you're walking, and then your body just stops, and it can be really hard to get going again, quite frightening. And then there's a lot of cognitive symptoms that people don't know about. Parkinson's creates mental health issues, depression, anxiety. Some of the Parkinson's drugs create compulsive behaviours. So it really can present in lots of different ways. No two people's Parkinson's is the same. Someone might have real problems with sleep and drooling and not have any kind of more obvious physical tremor or those kind of things. Someone else might be very tremor dominant and also have memory problems. It's really different. But yeah, it's really important that people learn about Parkinson's. We also know really, really sadly that 87% of people living with Parkinson's have faced discrimination or harassment as a result of people misunderstanding their condition. There was a story a few years ago about a high street store that threw someone out because they thought he was drunk. And we hear that quite a lot. So yeah, it's really important that people understand Parkinson's better.
Oh, that's I mean, like you say, that's shocking. It's so important. It's so important to raise that awareness. And I think with like celebrities coming forward now as well with their diagnosis, I think it's made it quite real for people. It's not often something that you think of as the debilitating condition that it is. You go sort of cancer, motor neuron disease, and that's what I've heard from talking to people, that they thought they'd had something else and were kind of shocked when they were told it was Parkinson's, and they didn't really know what it was. And I think the point about freezing was really interesting, because one of our singers said that rhythm really helps to get them going, to kind of beat something out, have a song in their head to kind of move to the steps. Is that something that's part of the research at all?
Yeah, there have been a few studies done looking at how you can break free of those freezing episodes, and quite often it is a music-based solution or a beat-based solution. So we do often hear of people, having a particular tune in their head that helps them get going, or there's actually an app that basically behaves like a kind of metronome for you to kind of click, click, get you going again, but also increase that kind of stride, the length of your walking gait as well, so you're walking better. So yeah, there's a real strong link between that kind of musicality and what it can do in the brain to alleviate some of the problems of Parkinson's. We also hear a lot that some people get real relief from their symptoms when they're listening to music, particularly if they close their eyes. It really calms some of their symptoms. We're not sure why. Something going on in the brain. But yeah.
Fingers crossed the song could make a difference then.
Yes. Yeah, I really think it could.
Above everything, music is about emotion and putting feelings into what we hear and the sounds we make. That's all the more important in a song, where on top of the melody and the harmonies and the texture of the piece, we have lyrics to put into words what emotion is really being felt. It wouldn't have been right to write these lyrics without talking to someone with first-hand experience of Parkinson's disease. After all the stats and research in the world could never predict the human reaction to this condition and what it causes. Today I'm speaking with Jackie Allen. Jackie was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease several years ago, and she's kindly agreed to have a chat with me today to tell me her experiences of living with Parkinson's.
First real symptom I had that I noticed was a tremor in my left hand, and it just never seemed to stop, and I would do all sorts of things. I would put pressure on the hand, I would sit on it, I would put it up my back, I'd shove it in my pocket, and I just couldn't stop it from shaking all the time. Went to the doctor, he put me on to a neurologist, and it must have been tattooed on my forehead or something, because I walked into the neurologist's room, and she asked me to get up and walk round and draw circles on pages, and I thought, what's this all about? And I'm thinking, and she says, do you know what this is? And I went, it's carpal tunnel, isn't it? And she went, no. And she kept saying, do you know what this is? And I kept saying, no, I really don't. And in the end she turned around and said, it's Parkinson's.
And what changed after that diagnosis? What changed straight away?
Straight away, my confidence. I started to lose confidence in myself, in everything around me.
Was it a kind of a relief to have a label to put on it if it was affecting your day-to-day life?
I suppose it was, because then I could go onto the internet and Google. I just Googled Parkinson's, and I thought, well, this isn't a death sentence. But it took me a long time to kind of come to terms with it. I mean, I know people who have had Parkinson's for 5, 6, 7 years, and they still haven't really come to terms with the fact they have Parkinson's. And I don't think you ever really do come to terms with the fact you've got Parkinson's.
What support was there for you straight away?
Straight away, none. None whatsoever. There's not really any support. The doctors give you the diagnosis and that's it. They send you out of their office and you really have to find your own way.
What is next for you with your condition? So you're obviously taking medication, and what is next?
Medication. Talk to the doctor, see what can be done. There is an operation called deep brain stimulation, which I have been told I could be eligible for, depending on certain criteria. But at this moment in time, it's not for me because the risks would outweigh the benefits.
You mentioned that you're doing Pilates and tango, and so how does all that help?
Well, Pilates helps because you're stretching the muscles and you're keeping the suppleness in your body. Also helps a little bit with breathing. The tango helps with balance and coordination. There's something in music that helps people with my condition, whether it's a strong beat or something. We find that we can coordinate better, and we can maybe, whereas before we do a tango class, we can't always walk in the room, never mind walk out the room. But I've seen people who amazingly have been having trouble walking in the room, but after an hour or so of doing tango, Argentinian tango, they can walk out.
It's incredible.
Without help.
And in many ways that's quite a mystery, isn't it? Because a lot of people respond differently to all of these things, but I think from what I've noticed, and it leads on to this project, is that music has such a big link with improving
does
the condition, and it's maybe to do with beat and to do with breathing. I think obviously singing, as we sing, we phrase differently and we're using our breath control.
That also helps. Singing, I find, also helps with speech, because one of the symptoms of Parkinson's is you can tend to lose your voice. You tend to, lots of people with Parkinson's tend to speak very, very quietly.
Right.
And you can't always hear them or understand what they're trying to communicate.
So that's the intensity of your voice, or the breath attached to the voice, or
it's the projection of your voice. Singing will help you project your voice.
And what about forming the words as you speak?
Yep, that helps as well. I mean, I suppose one of the first symptoms I had, which I didn't really take any notice of, was I would lose words. And instead of saying, look at the goslings, I'd say, look at the gooselets.
Right, okay.
And look at the piglings.
Okay.
And I couldn't say alligator. I would call it an agitator.
Well, it's the link between coordinating mentally and actually executing with the motor function.
Yeah.
And maybe there's something in this with the strong beats and, like you said, with the tango and with rhythm and the rhythmical way that we sing, and it's structured.
It kind of moves into your daily life. How you speak and how you form your words. It's a very difficult thing, because the brain is a mystery to how it works is a mystery to me.
It was vitally important that any work I undertook was supported by established research and therapies. This project is designed to support the existing treatments out there and offer heightened physical and mental well-being. As such, I really wanted to speak to a professional about the speech therapy treatments available for people with Parkinson's and how this project can support and build upon this important foundation. Today I'm speaking to Veronica Clark, a speech therapist certified in LSVT Loud, to find out a bit more about what she does and how it can be applied to this project.
The treatments that are sort of most evidence-based for people with Parkinson's in terms of voice, which would be LSVT Loud and the Speak Out. I'm certified in LSVT Loud, and so that's sort of what I can speak for. But in terms of projection and the loud concept, a lot of it is to do with the calibration. So most people with Parkinson's will think they are fine, or they think their voice is loud enough, but then in actual fact it's not. So they kind of start to lose that calibration of what's normal and what's not, as well as, you know, the function of the whole kind of breathing for speech mechanism will start to slow down. So you've got a bit of both, but then with something like LSVT Loud, you're working on that projection as well as the calibration. So you're looking to make those physiological changes and improve that breath support, improve pitch as well. So you've mentioned that, and I'll just come back to that in a minute, but doing all that under the umbrella of the word loud. But definitely, because you were talking about pitch before, and again, a lot of people will lose that ability to have that variation of pitch in their voice, and so their voice becomes more monotone. But we do really recommend to people that if they enjoy singing, that they should, because that's a really natural way of practicing your pitch without having the boring exercises. You're trying to make those physiological changes again with trying to extend your pitch range, but then with the music you get so much more, as I'm sure you know. So you get like the good feeling, the good hormones. You get, so it's like from an emotional point of view, from a psychological point of view, especially if you're doing it with someone. So if you're doing it like in a choir, you've got that group
another thing I wanted to ask you as well, writing the melodies, I'm not sure if you know, does the range of pitches decrease at all? Because obviously I'm looking at octave jumps at the moment, so quite sort of up the scale, down the scale, within a line. Does that kind of decrease, or kind of from a compositional point of view, or am I able to kind of try and extend the pitch range a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting, because obviously in sort of traditional voice therapy, like take away the Parkinsons, if I'm doing voice therapy with someone, then I'm working on their sort of speech pitch range, right? I'm not trying to go too high, I'm not trying to go too low, I'm trying to get them to have that pitch variation within the normal voice range. If they were a singer before, or if they would like to learn how to sing, then absolutely brilliant if you can extend that pitch range and see how far they can take it. But again, within speech therapy, we're looking at the kind of the normal vocal range for speech, which like I said before, tends to become smaller and smaller with someone with Parkinson's, because it becomes more monotone. But with therapy can be brought back to like where it was.
What about breathing? How is that affected in terms of, I'm looking at phrasing, and I think one thing we kind of discovered last time was that the breathing took a little bit longer, and we need to take more breaths in the phrase. So I'm trying to sort of build this piece around having, suitable gaps and things. So does that change depending on sort of where you are at your own journey within the disease, or how has that changed?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, in traditional voice therapy for people with Parkinson's, then we might look at things like chunking and phrasing, we call it. So we might look at what's their voice doing along the sentence, and where do they need to breathe to keep that voice quality up. And if they are running out of breath, you might get change in voice quality, like it might go hoarse or harsh or breathy, or just disappear. And then we say, right, that's the point. Before you get to that point, you need to take a top-up breath. But I think if you're looking at it in terms of like singing, then again, what would you normally do with somebody that didn't have Parkinson's? Like, how do you teach breathing for singing? Is it that you factor in those breaks? Do you kind of mark it out for people for that particular person, where do they need to breathe? Like, how would you do that normally?
It's very much sort of looking at it in musical phrases and trying to get to the natural point, speaking the text as well, and seeing what you can speak before adding the singing voice on. Obviously the same usual techniques of breathing the diaphragm, engaging your rib cage, and a lot of it as well, sort of going on and out breath, so the length of the phrase and putting that rhythm in. I think that's actually helped quite a lot with the Parkinson's group, because it kind of joins together the beat as well element, so kind of using the pulse of the words and giving it that and trying to manage not letting all that air out in one big go, and then managing it and balancing it throughout the phrase.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't see it being very different as a way in which you would do it, but you may find that you have to make more allowances for more breaks, or maybe that you just need to point it out more to people and say, right, this may be an issue, so let's take a nice deep breath. Whereas maybe with someone else, they would take it naturally. You might need to kind of say it more often, or have an exercise where you're specifically targeting that. But I think you might find it be different for everybody. And as you said, with somebody with more advanced Parkinson's, then everything is more difficult, right? So walking, swallowing, talking, everything. So then yes, it's going to get more difficult for them. But in terms of the way you teach it, I think if you put more emphasis, like you just said, you're doing various tasks in which you're addressing that, I think that's really good, rather than just assuming they can do it. And then all I would say is they may need shorter chunks. If you think their voice is given out a bit too early, then you might need to make some kind of allowances and adjustments.
What I've learned from the insights of Veronica and Jackie is just how much singing can positively impact people with Parkinson's and support and complement the existing treatments available. They spoke about 3 key things: rhythm, breathing, and projection. Rhythm to allow for a driven, punctuated beat that gives focus to the words. This goes hand in hand with writing a melody that would allow for different uses of emphasis of the voice and complement the idea of loudness, which in turn encourages improvements to other areas of speech and vocalization. It's no coincidence that projection and breathing are dependent on one another. To allow for a supported tone and use of the voice, we must breathe deeply and effectively. By accessing a more functional and effective breath as we do in singing, people with Parkinson's may very well be able to positively enhance the projection of their voice, which can suffer as a symptom of the condition. On top of all of this, the song has to be empowering, uplifting, and promote the positivity and joy that comes from partaking in music. I'm now heading to the studio to put all of these insights and ideas into action. So we're here in the studio, and the aim of today is to create a backing track. So that is all of the instruments and all of the beats for our lovely singers to perform to. And what I really want to achieve with this is a track that is actually very mainstream. From working with people with Parkinson's for a while now, I think what's really become apparent to me is the fact that they don't let their condition define them. And that, I think, is the reason why we need to create a track that a lot of people can enjoy, that places the song and the people behind it at the centre of the music scene. So there's no point of difference between the music that's already out there at the moment. And also from a kind of neurological, medical point of view, from what we've learnt so far, the driving beats, the rhythms, they really, really help people with Parkinson's form their words, and they really kind of encourage that motor function with that articulated phrasing. So obviously there's the phrasing, there's the articulation, the beats, the breath control. All of these kind of come with that energised accompaniment that really supports the vocal line. So I think rhythm and beat are going to be a really heavy feature of this. And in a way, I think that kind of dictates the essence of the music. So something a bit drivey, something a bit funky, and we'll see what we get. So we have got the song in mind. I roughly know, I think, what I want with this, but I think this is going to be a bit of a voyage of discovery, really keeping those values of, inclusivity, fun, most importantly, and obviously bearing in mind the kind of medical elements that can support this new style of singing that we're trying to work with here at the centre. So it's going to be a very exciting few hours, and you might get a sneak peek, and we'll see what we get. So this song's going to be fundamentally built around a few chords to kind of keep that familiarity throughout. So we've got our key chord, and then we're going to move to the subdominant. So the chorus, obviously, we have that really sense of grounding. So we've got, and we keep moving on, and we keep being strong. Away on, set the world on fire, keep walking on with me, won't stop the melody. To the tonic, and then obviously in the verse we're going to have pretty much the same chords, but we're just going to add in this lovely F minor, which I absolutely love, and then returning happily to the tonic, and that just adds in that kind of darkness, that journey, that kind of unexpected, that really kind of epitomizes the journey of the people singing it, which is what we want above all. So hopefully, in a nutshell, that's what we're going to build on. So slightly different keyboard now. This is our electric keyboard, which is a bit different to that lovely white grand that I really want to take home with me. And this is going to give all of those electric instruments, so the ones that really give that pulse and that drive and that dance-like feel. So on to the next task. up with it so far. So you can hear our little verse. So we've got this nice driving beat to really kind of set that up. And then adding in some slightly enhanced percussion just to give that kind of rhythmical focus. It's really, really important, which you'll hear in just a second. Here we go, bringing in that leg shaker there. Building the energy, building the excitement, and then we've got our lovely chorus coming in just a second. I don't want to give too much away. So here we go into the chorus now. So it's sounding like a piece of music. It really is. It's sounding almost complete. And how do we add some kind of pizzazz to the end? Well, I think a good old Coldplay clap, as I like to call it. Now that the track had been completed, it was finally time to add the voices. Obviously, in the time of the pandemic, this had to be done in very small groups, but what this did allow was for me to delve more deeply into the individual experiences of living with Parkinson's and how music can help in a myriad of different ways. So we're here today for our first session on the recording. So we've got our group together and we're going to be learning the song today, putting it all together and hoping to get some unison with a view to adding some harmonies a little bit down the line. So here we are, fingers crossed. 1, 2, sometimes we have to face some moment in our life we never thought we'd see. 3, 4, 1. I think of when I found the card that I've been dealt, took it all away from me. 3, 4, 1. But if you feel the joy of a growing noise, we'll break all the walls down.
Well, I was diagnosed about 18 years ago now.
Took it all away from me. There we go, and just try and sing into those repeating notes. From me.
I started first going to my GP because I was getting really tired. Just to give you an example, I used to be able to run 2 miles in 14.5 minutes fairly consistently, and I suppose about over a month my fitness went nosedives and I could barely run 2 miles and in 20 minutes, I suppose. So I went to the GP complaining that I was feeling fatigued and very listless. He did a series of tests, nothing came up. Then I developed a shake.
And I will say on that what we can do, that what's there, is I think the only time we sing on beat 1. What we can do when we're, so don't let that catch you out. And if you can see what we can do when we're strong together.
But I just ignored it for months and months. I used to sit on it and put my hand in my pocket so people wouldn't notice. Then my colleagues at work started saying, well, look, it's noticeable to us, you've got to get it sorted out. So I did eventually get a GP and he sent me off to a specialist who just, I just walked up and down the room for a couple of times. He got me to touch my nose a couple of times and said, yeah, you've got Parkinson's, that's it.
2, 3, away on beat. We'll set the world on fire. So you do have room to breathe, hey! And that's all that was said. Did you have any support straight away?
Not really, no. Eventually the Parkinson's nurse came around to see me. But no, it was fairly brutal. I mean, it's a bit of a blow to be told you got a chronic condition like that just because you can't touch your nose, which is basically what happened. But actually, when I got the diagnosis, I was quite pleased because I thought, oh, only Parkinson's. I suppose I was thinking I might have something more drastic like a brain tumour or motor neuron disease. So, and at the time I didn't know anything about Parkinson's. I just thought it was people shook a little bit. But in fact, it's a lot worse condition than people just shaking a bit. But at the time, I didn't realise that.
Let's learn the bridge, and then we've got 2 choruses, and that's it. So,
I mean, I know my voice is getting quieter, and I'm less distinct in using my words. I tend to slur them, particularly when I'm tired. And I think just singing and speech therapy just helps you, remind you to project your voice. Try and keep it a bit louder.
we'll break all the walls down, and that bit there, ba-da-ba-ba-ba. Okay, so we'll break all the walls down. So we've just finished our first session. It went really, really well. I'm sure you've seen there me waving my arms about, and we've managed to get quite a few tracks down. We've got 10 tracks, I think, so they'll all be mixed up, and then we'll have a different bunch of singers each time, so we're really getting a nice mix of people in to benefit as many people as possible. So it's just been so interesting to see how people have coped with the rhythms, how people have coped with the beat, how that driving beat and the articulation can help execute those phrases. And next time we're going to be adding a bit more colour, a bit more dynamics to really put the polish on the top. So we're in a very good place. Recording day 1 complete. So how did you find it?
Wonderful. It really helped breathing, helped the thinking, the coordination. Really, really helped. And the lyrics just say it all, how we feel when you get a diagnosis like we do. It just happens. Straight out the blue. Shell shock.
But you move on with it.
But you have to live with it and plod on.
So I've now pulled up for what will be our last session. So there's a lot to do today, lots of other little parts to gather, some harmonies, but we're in good shape and the sun is shining, so it's going to be wonderful, I'm sure. This is a time to really put these techniques that we've been working on into action and to really bring the song to life with all the feeling and the emotion that is embodied within the words of these wonderful people who just do wonders living with this condition every day. They really are so inspiring. It's been such a humbling experience to be able to use music, something that I work in to benefit others. So if this can help as many people as possible, even if it helps one person, it would have been worth it. So here we go, fingers crossed. I'm just heading in and we will knock it out of the park, I'm sure. Right, so final session, here we go. Let's give it a sing and see what we remember.
I normally sing in my church choir at Christmas, so of course didn't do it last year and really missed it. So this has been a really good experience. I feel terribly out of practice singing, but it's been really good, and I take my hat off to those people who said they were willing to do a solo.
First one, come along. Your one is a kind of answer. Come along with me. We actually want the echo to be slightly more emphasised.
It's brilliant, but there's just
one little thing. It's nothing to do with one little thing. There's always one little thing. So it's just to do with basically it's just to do with the breathing. I think it's nothing to do with the sound. The sound is great. I just think we can make it a little bit easier and a little bit stronger. So I'll teach you a singer's breath. So you probably already know this, but I think what I've noticed just looking around, some people are breathing from the shoulders and we get a little bit of shoulder movement when we breathe. So I'm sure you know to breathe from the diaphragm when you're singing. But one thing that actually really helped me is thinking about the ribs. So I don't know, if you could put your arms on your ribs and take a breath in and feel that expansion. Just try and get to the top of your ribs. So take a breath in, like a low diaphragmatic breath. You should feel that massive expansion in the back of your ribs. Yeah? So if you now take your hands away and try and take that same breath and feel your ribs moving, you find that you're breathing a lot more deeply, yeah? So if you try and keep your ribs up, now I've seen some people try and do breathing from the ribs
And what we end up doing is collapsing the form. So we end up kind of doing this while we're singing. So we do a phrase and then it collapses. So try and keep your ribs up. We get this weird kind of dance going on. But just try and keep these ribs from going like this. Okay, I know it's hard when you're sitting down as well. You kind of want to fold yourself in, like that. But try and really keep those engaged. And I think that will really strengthen the sound. So we finished our recording session today. We've got all of the tracks, we've got some harmonies. Everyone was absolutely fantastic. I think we've got everything we need to make a wonderful song that can really make a difference. So fingers crossed, it's going to sound great in the mix, I'm sure it will, and on to the next stage of post-production. I can't wait for you all to hear it.
Having completed the recording process, it was time to piece all the components together to create a final mix. I'm not sure I agree with the analogy given by one of the singers of turning a sow's ear into a silk purse, and when you hear the song, I'm sure you won't either. What you will hear is the passion, depth and vigour with which the voices on this single perform. Every voice you hear either lives with or has been affected by Parkinson's disease in some way. Every voice, its own journey. As such, the process of mixing was about weaving together these individual stories to bring something very special to life.
The name, okay, the story behind the name. Well, I think the first thing to say with this was that I really wanted it to belong to everybody. It's very important that it does belong to everybody. So with that in mind, it was important to discuss the name as a group and come to a group decision and have as many people involved in that decision-making process as possible. So I think the first thing to say is the fact that in the spirit of inclusivity and accessibility, I didn't want to call it a choir because a choir, the word choir kind of incites a certain level of musical understanding and maybe prestige that some people might have felt that they weren't able to be a part of. So it wasn't to be a choir, it was to be a group. And I think in keeping with the ethos of the song, we wanted a name that was quite mainstream, quite commercial, and nothing that really pinpointed it as a charity record or a charity project or a song sung by people with Parkinson's. We just wanted to be a group singing a cool song. So I did put it out to the field, and actually I will tell you a quote that really, really stuck with me was by a lady in the group, and she said to me, "Laugh with it and laugh in spite of it." And with that in mind, the most popular name for our group of people with Parkinson's singing the song, which is to be called Higher, is Shake. Shake. Why not? So this is, well, I'm so thrilled to be able to introduce you to Higher by Shake.